In this video, we're going to go over the 6 key factors to improving your credit score. And this is super important for Amazon sellers to understand credit, what makes your credit score better, what makes your credit score worse, how to use credit, how to leverage credit the right way, when it's okay to sit on a balance and max out a credit card, and when it's going to hurt your score. There's different scenarios. We're going to break all of this down. This is a long episode, but I highly recommend you listen to the whole thing. I put together, there's a lot of show notes, but there's a tracker spreadsheet below that will help you increase your credit score. Big shout out to Taylor Thomas. He's one of the official sponsors of Miami Sellers Conference. If you guys are going to Miami Sellers Conference, you'll meet him there. But he's personally helped me out so much. He boosted my credit score 60 points just with little things that I was doing. And I was paying my cards on time, doing everything. I was doing everything I should have. I paid no interest in 2024, but my credit score I was still making a few mistakes, and he's going to go over these. And so if you're at all serious about building an Amazon business and improving your credit, this is going to be a good episode for you. Let me know if you guys have questions below, and I'm doing a few of these videos with Taylor. So whatever questions you guys comment below, we will answer in future videos. Much love. Peace. What's up, guys? In this video, we're going to go over the 6 key factors to a 750 plus credit score. I'm joined here with Taylor Thomas, who was at Miami Sellers Conference last year, who sponsored Miami Sellers Conference last year with arbitragecard.com. And I can say before we dive into the video, he has helped me increase my credit score by 60 points. I was doing some stupid things that I didn't even realize were stupid. We can talk a little bit about that. I'm sure he'll dive into it with the 6 key factors. But just in a few month period, he helped me take my credit score up 60 points. And I'm about to apply for a mortgage, get some property here in Nashville, Tennessee. So this was perfect timing. And you've been so helpful along the way, man. Like, you even told me you were about to help me get a credit card for like $2,000 in bonuses. And then I told you I was applying for a mortgage. You're like, whoa, slow down. Don't apply for the mortgage yet. Or don't apply for the credit card. Get the mortgage first, and then we can find other opportunities for credit cards in the future. So I really appreciate you, man. And let's dive into it.
Cool. Yeah, man. I mean, I appreciate you having me on here, and I've enjoyed, helping you with that stuff too. It's a topic that I, have been passionate about for the past several years. I mean, honestly, I'm basically just like a credit card nerd, so to speak. And it's also rewarding to get to help other people, meet their goals with that stuff.
Definitely 100%. And I think this is super important for Amazon sellers, because right now you might not feel like you need credit cards or whatever, but I can tell you, having like $100,000 worth of credit that you can pull the trigger on is going to be huge. When you have good inventory, like right now, this year's, for me, it's all about buying good inventory. And I have decent credit, but with you helping me, like, I just know that I'm going to get even more, and having that availability is huge. So let's dive into what's tip number 1.
Okay. Whoa. I mean, so I guess I'll preface all this by saying, like, there's a lot to go over just in general with, with the topic of credit cards and credit scores. What I'd like to do is kind of just first do like a high level overview of the main factors that actually impact your credit score, because, I think a lot of people, they might not have the score that they would like. And a lot of times it can seem kind of overwhelming trying to figure out, like, tangibly how to actually, improve your score and increase it, and which action steps you actually need to take to make that happen, and then kind of feel like kind of the unknown, or kind of like a mystery that you're trying to figure out. So that's kind of what I like to do first. I would say, tip number 1 in terms of like just the foundation of all this is, obviously you need to know what your numbers and your metrics are currently. Like, if you don't know that, then you can't go and analyze them and figure out what you need to do, to make them be higher, right? So first thing would be, if you don't already have a Credit Karma account, go make one, so you actually can see all of your metrics in there. I mean, ideally, you should have accounts with, all the three major credit bureaus, so Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax directly. But Credit Karma is a really easy way to get started. I would say, I mean, you could do all those would be good. But yeah, definitely get started with having a Credit Karma account if you don't already have one, so you can actually go in there and look at, what your numbers are currently.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't
Yep.
realize there's like 3 different credit scores you can have.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, that's the other thing too, is your credit score is not just one score. It's 3 different ones at any given time. So I mean, you could, you're gonna have an average score across those 3 at any given time, but it's not just gonna be one. So you've got, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. They're all gonna be a little bit different. They're probably gonna be roughly in the same ballpark though. They're probably not gonna vary too much, but yeah, they're gonna be like, sort of close together. So after you do that, I guess, the main thing to understand is that there are, a handful of factors that actually determine what your score is. And this is really important. So, and what you can do is if you just go online and type in like just FICO score factors, you'll see, like, it'll show you a chart of what this looks like, essentially just like a circle. And I don't know, I guess I could share my screen on here, right? I think it lets me do that if I
you
want to.
go for it. I'll pop it up.
Yeah, let's see. Okay. Yeah, so, your FICO score is a very widely used indicator of, of what your credit score is going to be. And yeah, so you got all these factors here, right? Now, the biggest one is payment history. So this makes up 35% of your score. Ideally you want to be at 100% if possible. So meaning you have never missed any payments, you've never had any late payments ever. 99% is still good. But, once you get into like, if you're like 98% or less, then you're at a point where that can significantly impact your credit score in a negative way. So like that's the big one, is just payment history. And, obviously if you've already had late payments in the past, and, you can't go back and undo those. But what you can do is set up auto pay on all your cards and have it pay at the very least the minimum balance every month, because that's, a late payment is you didn't even make the minimum payment. Like that's basically what that is. Even if you were to, make the minimum payment, but leave some money on there and be accumulating interest on it, which you don't want to do that either. But even if you just only made the minimum payment, then you would avoid the late payment. So that's one thing that you can do that I suggest everybody to do, because, you might at some point like forget to make the payment on time, or you might be on vacation, or just something happens, or you thought it was at a different time in the month and you accidentally forget to pay it on time. So doing that ensures that it's always going to get paid when it's supposed to be. So that's like the first big one. The second big one is this amounts owed right here, which accounts for 30% of your credit score. And amounts owed, that's the like terminology that FICO uses for it. If you look at it in Credit Karma, which I've already got it pulled up here. And by the way, to get to this screen and to look at these factors, you just go to, like, if you're in the Today tab here. Oh, it logged me out. Never mind. I've got the same thing pulled up on here though, because this is a blog post I did about this topic a couple days ago, and I actually have the screenshot there. But if you go to the Today tab, which is basically like the home page, like when you're logged in, and then you just click on your one of the 2 credit scores, either TransUnion or Equifax, and then you scroll down, like you'll see this. But this second one, called credit card use, is the same as amounts owed in FICO. So it's the same, there's different terminology, means the same thing. And it's basically the amount of credit that you're currently using compared to the total amount of credit that you have, So if you had $100,000 in total credit across all of your cards that show up on your credit report, and you're using, $30,000 of that, then, your utilization rate / amounts owed / credit card use is going to show up as 30%. Here, this one's a 0%, obviously, and it shows that as excellent, because that's really good. And it sometimes is better to have like a little bit of activity there. So, 1 to 2% maybe, I'd say might even be better than 0, because then there's some activity there. But keeping that as low as possible is a really key thing, which I know is something that we had talked about a lot, that ended up helping your credit score a lot, was, bringing that down.
Yeah, that was huge.
Yeah,
and just like real quick, Guys, I didn't pay
Yeah.
any interest up through November of last year because I thought like if you paid interest, like that's going to screw up your credit score. And so I was paying all the cards on time and my credit score still wasn't going up. Turns out the reason why is I have all these credit cards and I have business cards and personal cards. And my personal cards don't even have that big of limits. I have one with like 10,000, I have one with 6,000. But where I was making the mistake was I was letting that balance sit. And so because the personal credit, total credit wasn't that much in comparison to my business cards that allowed me to spend like 40 grand plus. What I really should have been doing is have those balances big and I could even sit on them, pay interest on them, and my credit score is going to increase because it's personal credit versus business credit. And I didn't understand that. And just by paying off my personal, and again, I wasn't making any late payments or anything, but just by keeping those balances lower on average. So I started paying like every week. And that's really, I think, what improved my score. We also did another thing too, which we can talk about later. But once you explained that to me in November, I was like, I'm going to crush it this Q4. I maxed out this business card, sat on it, paid a little bit of interest, which I always thought was going to like screw up my score. My score continued to go up as I sat on a giant business credit card balance, kept my personal cards low, and score went up. So appreciate you, man. Like like it sounds so obvious now, but these little things, like when you're busy in your business, you don't really think of little things like this.
Well, the thing is, like, there's so many different, like, small nuances and kind of, things here that a lot of people don't know or don't realize, that if no one tells you, you're not going to be aware of. But yeah, I mean, going back to this again, it's like one important thing to remember with this metric and this factor is, it's a percentage. It's not a dollar amount. So it's a percentage. It's the amount of credit that you're using compared to the amount of credit you have access to. So again, if it's 100K that you have, with credit and you're using 30K of that, it's going to be 30%. If you had only 50K of available credit and you're still using 30K, that same amount, it's going to be 60%. So it'd be a lot higher because it's a ratio, right? So if you had, $1 million of credit available and you're using 30K of that, it would only be 3%. So it's a ratio, it's relative. The other thing is with this, pretty much all the time, each credit card you have, they're going to report the current balance on the card to the credit bureaus when the statement ends. So every time the statement ends each month, that's when that balance gets reported to the credit bureaus. So like if you pay it off, it's probably not going to be reflected on your credit like that same day. The balance is going to show up on your credit report is the balance that it was at whenever the statement cycle ended. And then they reported it, right? So, you could, in theory, like if you just make sure that you're always paying it down or paying off the balances completely before the statement ends and it closes with a $0 balance and then that reports to the bureaus, that would work. But it's also, also probably better to just keep those balances low just all the time.
Yeah, that's what made the difference for us. And like theoretically, you could have 100 grand in business credit on credit cards.
Yeah.
You could have 10 grand on personal credit. And if you are sitting on a 5 grand balance personally, you're at 50% utilization, which is going to not look good. Even though like in comparison to all of your credit, you have 110,000 because you're not utilizing those business cards or rather sitting on those balances, your credit score that's being reported, you're at 50% utilization. So that was huge, man.
Exactly. Yeah. I think I had a friend of mine a couple months ago who I was talking to about this stuff. And I think his utilization rate on his credit was like super high, but he only had his balance was like $500 or something because his total credit he had was like super low. It was like maybe like $1,000, but and he had like $500 on there. So it was like his utilization rate was 50%. So it's, again, it's a percentage, but like you were saying, and this is another, really important nuance and thing to keep in mind with all this stuff is that the vast majority of the time, your balances on business cards, or just the business cards themselves, do not report to your personal credit report. And this is very important because, like you mentioned, what that means is if you are an Amazon seller and you are purchasing inventory all the time to sell on Amazon, and you're doing that, constantly, which means you're probably never going to have the card that you're using for that inventory like paid down to zero. You're always buying more, getting some disbursements from Amazon, paying it down a little bit, then buying more. If you have that on a business credit card, like that balance is not going to show up on your personal credit report. It's essentially hidden from it, because on your credit report, it's only going to show the personal cards that you have. So business cards do not show up on there. So if you have, Amex Business Platinum, if you have a Chase Ink Preferred Unlimited, Chase Ink Cash, or Premier, any of those four, like whatever, those balances, not only the balances, but also just the cards themselves and their credit limits are not going to show up on your credit report. So the credit limits aren't going to show up on there either, which means it's not going to make your, total credit that you have available to you, at least the amount that's shown on your credit report, is not going to make that be larger either. Like nothing from that card is going to show up on there. Now, when you apply for it, the hard inquiry from that bank, so let's say from Chase, from Amex, will show up on there. So it'll do a hard inquiry, that will appear. But if you get approved from the card is not showing up on there, right? So again, it's like if you, have all of your inventory purchases on business cards, it's not going to show up on there, and you should be doing that anyway, and keeping them off of personal cards. This is a big reason why that's important to do, because then you're keeping your utilization low. On the business cards, it's essentially hidden from your credit report. Now, one caveat and exception with this is Capital One business cards do show up on your credit report. So even though they're business cards, for whatever reason, Capital One does report those balances and all the data, or the metrics from those cards, to your credit report. I think there's because I was reading about this recently, and I mean, anything with the credit card world, right, is liable to change at any given time. So I think I saw recently that there's one Capital One business card that now doesn't show up on your credit report, but all the rest of them do, or something weird like that. I'd have to go back and look. I don't know how quickly I could try to find it, but for the most part, and for a while, that was the case. Was all of their business cards, they would show up on your credit report, so which would mean you probably wouldn't want to have one of those and be using it on inventory all the time, because then all that balance is going to be showing up on there. Let's see. It's saying here, and I'm asking Perplexity, that the Spark Cash Plus for business and the Venture X business do not report to personal credit bureaus as long as the account is in good standing. Whereas Capital One Spark Miles for business, Miles Select, Capital One Spark Cash Select, Spark Classic, it's saying that all those do report to your personal credit. So it's important to review all that stuff, and there might be people listening who they already have one of those cards that they're using for business stuff, and it is showing up on their credit report, which in that case you probably just want to go on to Credit Karma, look at all of the different accounts that you have, all the different credit cards on there, and see if you can find that one, if you do have a Capital One, a Spark Cash or something, just to figure out whether it's on there or not. But that's one that you have to, be careful with and be aware of that exception. And with a lot of this stuff, there's always sometimes there's exceptions for things. So it's 100%. Important to understand all that.
You talked about utilization, knowing the nuances, the difference between really minimizing your utilization by knowing which cards are personal, therefore reported. What else do you got? What other of the 6 key factors? Would you say we're on number 1 still, or?
No, those are the first 2. So you got payment history and then utilization.
Payment history, utilization.
So you got those 2. And again, like I said, utilization is on FICO, they call it amounts owed, and on Credit Karma, it's called credit card use. But one, significant thing to point out is that those 2 factors together make up 65% of the factors that make up 65% of what goes into your credit score.
Yep.
Right, because the payment history is 35%, the utilization rate is 30%. So those together make up 65%. So if you did a really good job with those two, you're already, setting yourself up for success. And if we talk about like the 80-20 rule, those are the two things really to focus on. I would say after those two, derogatory marks is also a big one, which I think you had alluded to, before we were going to talk about, later. So I guess we can do that. But I mean, basically, if you have any, collections accounts or anything outstanding from like, this could be any like medical bills or like, rent stuff, like electricity, power bills that you owe that you're late on, anything like that shows up on there is going to, impact your score negatively also. And, normally what happens is like you have to be late on a payment for like, several months in order for them to actually get a collections agency involved and have that put on your credit report. But, a lot of times when that happens to people, like they don't even realize it. So I actually had a derogatory mark on my credit report like 7 or 8 years ago. And initially I didn't even know about it. Like I just went into, check my credit report one day and I saw it on there and I went and investigated and I had like no idea what it was. And it was something where I think it was a medical bill that I owed. I mean, it's been so long ago at this point, I'm trying to remember all the details, but basically they had, sent or I guess multiple letters, they had sent to this apartment complex that I used to live at, but no longer lived at. So I didn't receive the letters because they sent it to somewhere I no longer lived. So I didn't even know about it, and then I saw I had it on there and I was like, well, what the heck is this? Like, you guys didn't tell me about this. And they're like, yeah, we did. We sent you letters. I was like, to where? Like, to this address. I'm like, well, I don't live there. Yeah. So, that was on my credit. And I was like, well, okay, I need to get that removed. So typically what you do in those scenarios is you call, the collections agency and or the original creditor, so the original company that you owed money to, and you ask them to agree to remove, that derogatory mark or that collections account from your credit if you pay it off in full. Now, obviously, it depends on like how much the amount is, because if it's like $50,000 that you owe for some reason, then it's like, okay, it might be hard for you to pay off in full. But I mean, in my case, it was like a couple $100. Mm-hmm. So it was like something that I could easily go ahead and pay, but I just didn't know about it. But I called them and they're like, yeah, we can remove it if you pay it. So I paid it, and it took a couple months, but it finally fell off. So it's normally what you should do in those scenarios as well is ask them for, an email or something in writing stating that if you pay it, this is before you pay it, stating that if you pay it, they'll remove it from your credit, or that they will contact the credit bureaus and ask them to remove it. And then, you normally wait like a month or two. And if it still doesn't fall off at that point, you can just dispute that collections account or that derogatory mark directly with each credit bureau. So you just go like directly to Experian, like create an Experian account if you don't already have one. Same thing with TransUnion and Equifax. And you just dispute that specific, thing that's on your credit and say, hey, I already paid this. I mean, I guess you could technically say, I don't even know what this is, but that wouldn't be true. But you could say, yeah, like, okay, I already paid this, so this needs to be removed. Mm-hmm. But that, even having one derogatory mark can significantly impact your credit. I mean, I would say, maybe if I were to guess, at least like 20 points or more than that. Mm-hmm. So you want to have that be 0. And that's one that specific metric, like on its own, only shows up in Credit Karma. So it's not included in that FICO chart, but it probably would still be affecting the payment history. So that's the third big one. And those three are really kind of I would say, the ones that have the most impact. So if you look here at the screenshot from Credit Karma, like those are the top 3, and they all say high impact. It doesn't give a percentage like FICO does, but it says high impact for all those 3. So if you have payment history at 99% or 100, credit card use, like I would say the goal should be have it less than 5% at any given time. Less than 3% or less is the best. And then derogatory marks at 0. Like with those 3, you're going to be pretty good. And then after that, you got these last 3 here, which are also in FICO. So you've got, the length of credit history, which is the same as credit age, or it's roughly the same as credit age in in Credit Karma, which is just the average age of the accounts that you have. So basically, if your credit age is longer, meaning you've had credit for a longer amount of time, or the average age of all those accounts is longer, that's going to be better, because that means they're seeing that you have been able to manage your credit over a longer period of time. And then in Credit Karma, you got total accounts, which is the total amount of accounts that you have. And this includes, from what I've seen, at least in Credit Karma, it includes accounts that have been closed. So it's all the accounts that you have currently or that have been closed. In FICO, you've got credit mix, which is kind of the same. I mean, it's not exactly the same. This is more in terms of like if you have different types of credit. So in addition to credit cards, if you have, like installment loans, like auto loans, mortgage, etc., having more variety there helps. But both of those things in terms of the credit mix on FICO and total accounts on Credit Karma are pretty similar in terms of what they look at. Now, one thing that I want to point out here is, this says 21 accounts for this metric, and the grade that it gives it is excellent. So what that means is, and I think it's like 20 and above, it gives you excellent. Basically, the more accounts that you have, at least for this metric on Credit Karma, the better. And I know, I believe that some people that it's easy in general to have the assumption that, having more credit cards is like not a good thing, or that it's going to make your credit score be less. But in reality, and this is, big and very important, if you manage those cards responsibly and, you're paying them on time, you're keeping the utilization rate down, having more cards over the long run actually improves your score. So you, by getting more credit cards, assuming you're, again, not, being irresponsible with them, that's actually going to make your score go up, and I currently have in total 25 active cards. I have a few that, that have been closed, that I closed at some point for one reason or another, but currently I have 25 they're actively open and in use. And, my score is around 775. And that's just because I'm using them all responsibly. So, and I mean, I have friends who are older than me who have had more time to accumulate more cards. There's one guy I know who has like 40 cards and his credit score is like above 800. So having more cards over a longer period of time actually helps if you're doing everything right. And then the last thing is hard inquiries. So in Credit Karma, it's hard inquiries here, and then in FICO, it's just called new credit, but it's the same thing. It's the exact same thing they're talking about in both these places. But with hard inquiries, so I also believe that a lot of people are in general like kind of scared of a hard inquiry. Like, if I apply for a car, I'm gonna get a hard inquiry. That's gonna be bad. That's gonna hurt my score. And so the reality is, it does temporarily, and but by not very much, it does lower your score like slightly. So normally it'll lower your score by around like 5 to 10 points, just applying for a card and getting a hard inquiry. But then normally after a month or a month and a half, your score just bounces back to where it was before that. So it doesn't really hurt you that much. And since we just got done talking about how having more cards that you're managing responsibly makes your credit score go up over the long term, obviously you can't get more cards unless you apply for more cards and get some hard inquiries, right? So it's kind of like a minor inconvenience that's necessary in order to accumulate a more thorough or more complete portfolio of cards, which then in turn makes your score go up over the long term, right? So it's like, I mean, me, if I think in general, in terms of like all the cards that I've actually gotten, including ones that I've closed, I probably have a little bit over 30, maybe like 32 or something. So that's, 32. And then there's been some cards I've applied for that I got denied. So let's say like maybe 35 hard inquiries that I've gotten over the past, 6 or 7 years. But they only stay on there for up to 2 years. But it's like, that's what you have to do in order to get more. And especially if each card you get has a really good sign-up bonus that's profitable or gives you a really good cashback rate, I mean, it's totally worth it. And your credit is there to be like used on stuff and actually make you more money, not to just let it there sitting idly and not doing anything with it,
Yep.
I
think an underrated thing in the Amazon business, like I know a lot of people want to only use cash. They don't believe in credit cards, but a real benefit of credit cards is you can charge back if anything ever happens. So if you buy from a supplier or you pay an invoice, even for prep or whatever, anything, and you don't get it fulfilled, you're protected on a credit card because you can charge back. The credit card's going to protect you, in that front. So
yeah.
I kind of didn't really realize that until, I've been through a few things with suppliers and I'm like, sometimes I'm like, damn, I wish I would have paid on a credit card.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, again, if we, back on that FICO chart, like with the new credit, that specific factor, it like that only accounts for 10% of your credit score. Whereas like we talked about before, the payment history and utilization rate together make up 65%. So those two things account for account for 6.5 times what goes into your credit score compared to just the hard inquiries. So they're not like, you do want to be careful with them. Like, I don't want to just say, go and apply for a ton of cards and don't like, you definitely want to space out the applications, maybe apply for a card every, 2 months or something, or month and a half. You don't want to just apply for a bunch of cards. Cause then, each next application that you do, they're going to see, oh, you just were applying for all these cards, like, and they're going to decline you. And so each bank is kind of different in terms of how sensitive they are to recent inquiries that you've had. So, definitely like, do more research on that and kind of understand how to space those out. But at the same time, like overall, at the end of the day, it's not a huge deal. And there's lots of things that are more important than hard inquiries.
Heck yeah. Yeah. Got 16 minutes before I got to run. What else you got for them?
Cool. So I would say, just to kind of review like action steps for this stuff, because we've been talking about, a lot of things in terms of giving people, something tangible they can go do. I would say, for the payment history, set up auto pay for all your cards, make sure it at least pays the minimum payment, if not the full statement balance every month. That's the best thing to do, because that helps you avoid, accidentally having late payments. And again, the goal there should be 100% payment history, but if you can do 99%, if you're already there, like if you already have some late payments in the past, 99, then like make sure to keep it there and try not to drop below that. Then secondly, utilization, I would say keep under 5% always. If you're making business purchases all the time, do those on credit cards, and maybe not a Capital One card unless you do some research and you're like sure that, this specific one I have from Capital One is not going to show up on my, personal credit report. And then also like double check it, just sporadically or regularly to make sure it's not, showing that balance on there. Then, thirdly, check to see if you have any derogatory marks. Just go on Credit Karma. That's probably the easiest thing to do. If it says 0, then you're good. If you have one or more, then you need to research and see, who those were owed to, reach out to them, request to, request them to remove them from your credit report if you pay them off in full. And what I'll actually do too, because like I mentioned, I did a blog post about this whole thing 2 days ago, so we can like leave that in the description or somewhere where people can access it, because it goes into all of this also.
Yeah, just put it in the YouTube description.
That's the third thing. Fourth would be just, make sure you go in and review all of your factors, including those first three, but also the last three, which are still, all of them are important, but the last three are like have a little bit less of an impact. So those would be the main action steps. Kind of a bonus strategy, if you really want to, go beyond all that and give your credit score an additional boost, is getting added as an authorized user on somebody else's credit card that has really high, really positive metrics. But you have to be careful with that, because it needs to be someone that you trust and who manages their credit and their finances responsibly. And also that the card itself is a really good fit for this, because if you get someone to add you on a card that has negative metrics or negative history, that in turn is going to have negative effects on your credit, right? So basically, kind of the steps I would lay out, or maybe the criteria to look for, would be, choose a trusted family member or friend who has really good credit and has a specific card that would, that has really good metrics on it. It needs to be a personal card so that it actually reports to the credit bureau. So like having someone add you on a business card, like on a Chase or Amex or Citi or whatever, like if it's not showing up on their credit report anyway, then, it's not going to show up on yours if you get added to it. So it needs to be a personal card. In terms of the metrics to look for, you want a long credit history. So ideally a card that they've had for several years if possible, perfect payment history, so no late payments, a high credit limit if possible. The reason for that is because that's going to increase the total amount of credit that you have available, at least the amount that showed on your credit score, which means your utilization rate is going to go down. And also a card that they don't really use. So like they currently has a low balance, or ideally has no balance at all, and then is not going to have a balance on it because they don't use it. So if you could, and that could be, again, like could be a parent, family member, business partner, friend, like whatever. But as long as you make sure that all of those, pieces of criteria are met, then that would help your credit score. And like we, done that with you, we got you added on a couple cards, and it helped your score to go up as well. Yeah. And it also makes your total number of accounts be higher too. So it helps in, several different ways.
And something to add here is it doesn't hurt the person at all. So if you ask your dad or grandma to go on their card, it literally doesn't affect their score no matter what you do. Obviously, if they give you a card, you can go spend it, so if they actually give you the card, that's different. But I think FICO was trying to get rid of this a while back. I think they said, like, we don't want this authorized user hack to still exist. I don't know if you've heard that, but they were like trying to.
I haven't heard anything about that.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe it was just like something that people were talking about, but I heard that it was like they were like tired of people using, like, hacking the system, and so they tried to potentially take that away. But the truth is, like, if somebody trusts you enough to add you as an authorized user, like in my opinion, that probably should boost your credit score, because it shows that people trust you.
Yeah. Well, and the thing here is too, like you wouldn't need to like use the card.
Yeah, you don't actually need the card.
All you're doing is getting added as an authorized user onto their card, which means like there would be an authorized user card in your name that exists, but like you don't need to use it. So like there's no reason why you would even.
I can see how in like so many families the conversation just wouldn't go over well. Like, people that don't trust, like just families. I can just see like most families not understanding it. So I think it's important to note that it doesn't affect the user at all.
Yeah, it wouldn't affect them unless they gave you the card and then you wouldn't like spend a bunch of money and like and then disappeared and like left them with a balance. But besides that, all assuming you don't do that, and there's no reason to use it anyway. Like you shouldn't, if all you're doing is getting added on their card for that purpose to increase your credit score, like you shouldn't be going and using it. Like you should just be using whatever business card you're going to be using for stuff,
Yep.
or if you have a personal card for personal things,
Yep.
that's the best thing to do. But
Exactly.
I mean, if you do all of these things that that we've mentioned, and you are, analyzing and monitoring those metrics, like in your Credit Karma account, and with the credit bureaus directly, like with Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, then I mean, you should be good. And this, doing all these things properly will increase your credit score.
Mhm.
And additionally, you shouldn't have to pay to access your credit score. Like you can get your credit score with all 3 bureaus for free. So if anything pops up asking you to pay, like don't do it because you don't have to.
Yeah, especially on, is it Experian? Always tries to get you every time you log in.
Yeah, like pretty much every time you log into Experian, it will ask you if you want to upgrade your membership or just keep it where it is. And
I
it
think I
makes it
did that
kind
by
of
accident one time. You have to click like small text at the bottom that just says like, don't upgrade and move on.
yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like they position it in a way where it looks like it's required to move
Mhm.
forward, but it's actually not. You just go down and click no, keep my current membership.
Yep.
I mean, they'll, with an upgrade, like, yeah, they probably would give you some additional information or data, but like you don't really need it because you can see everything you need to see without doing that.
Mhm.
But anyway, that's the the main pieces of, the stuff I was going to discuss. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what you want to do with the time we have left.
I mean, we got you coming to Miami, man. You're gonna be, you sponsored last year. Taylor had cornhole outside of the conference room. People were out there playing arbitrage card cornhole. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think you had the best booth out of all the sponsors. And this year you're gonna have an awesome after party. So excited for that. And we'll give more details on that as time goes on. But if you guys want to meet Taylor, come to Miami, go to MiamiSellersConference.com, get your tickets. And it's going to be like basically a 3-day event this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm excited for it, man.
Yeah.
And I think, so actually, I mean, our after party is going to be on my birthday too.
So
that's going to be nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be a great time.
But yeah,
all right, brother. Where can they find you at?
So, yeah, I mean, arbitragecard.com. If anyone needs discounted gift cards to help them increase their margins in their OA or RA business, whichever kind of arbitrage you're doing, go to arbitragecard.com. That's what we do. I've been doing that for the past 5 years, and, I mean, we got competitive discounts on all the major brands. So like Nike, I believe we're at like 10% off right now for $200 cards, for example. But, all the big ones. So Nike, Adidas, Marshalls, Sephora, Macy's, Kohl's, Target, Home Depot, etc., Lowe's. We got all the brands that OA people need. And we're also coming out with a handful of really big features soon too. So that's exciting. We're actually working on a Chrome extension right now, which is going to be super cool. And we should have that finished before the conference so we can really, promote that a lot and display it once we're there.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited, man.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be a good one.
Cool. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it.
Go follow Taylor, guys. I'll link all of his socials below, and whatever else you mentioned in the show notes too. And yeah, guys, if you guys take action on what he said, I promise your score is going to go up. And hopefully that was valuable. If you guys have any questions at all, comment below. He'll be coming back on the channel soon, so we'll answer any questions you guys comment now. Much love. Peace.